This is Fujifilm's 27mm pancake lens, and as you can see, it is absolutely tiny. But can this really small lens really be all it's cracked up to be and be a one-size-fits-all for travel and street photography? To test the theory, I decided to fly it all the way around the world to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and give it a proper field test, so let's go find out. So as we start the photo walk off with a little test shot here, which I think came out quite nicely, I would like to say that all of the photos you're seeing here today are straight out of camera JPEGs. I'm using the classic negative film simulation. It's got a little bit of grain, a little bit of a tone curve, and you can see the rest of the settings on screen now. I really like the colors that you get from this film simulation. It's got that very stylized and effective color toning and a lot of depth to the image as well. It comes out really nicely. I'm in the Petaling Street area, which is a very busy street market in the kind of Chinatown part of Kuala Lumpur, and I thought I'd get a few shots before I cross the road, which I'm quite happy with. A few of the shots I've got today were using the digital teleconverter function. I have already done another video about that, but the short version is that it effectively doubles your focal length by cropping in camera. It can be really good for these JPEG-only workflows where you're just trying to compose everything directly in camera. Now, heading inside the street market, it was obviously very, very busy and very crowded, and a lot more stalls there than I've seen before. But I did manage to get a couple of nice shots of people shopping or people selling things from their stores. Getting out of the cramped chaos, I found an area of the market that I was much happier with and had a lot more potential for strong compositions. I always like to look for depth in street photography scenes like this, where there's a lot of things going on. And the 27mm here is actually perfect for that. You can really tell a lot of stories in the same frame, which is something I'm always a fan of. I do think you can really get a sense from the difference of the tonality between the footage I've got off the Insta360 and the footage I'm getting from the camera, of just how cool the classic negative film sim really is. I think it's really a film simulation that tries to say something. It's based off of Fujicolor Superior, which was a really dramatic film stock, and it carries that forward into the digital era really well. The tones and colors come across really different, and you're clearly getting something that is trying to make a statement, it's trying to be something special. Something you'll see that I end up focusing on quite a lot in photo walks around here is the food. Malaysia's got some of the best food in the world, and it feels good to showcase it in its natural environment. It just looks so delicious all the time. I also love the opportunity to showcase cityscapes. There are so many interesting sightlines that you get around this part of the city, and interesting patterns of traffic or people, or the way that buildings line up in the distance. It's really quite unique and quite fun. There's just so much going on in this area, you're always going to get overlapping stories, and a lot of the times you really get these images that you almost feel like you can smell. Now, the focal length of this lens is a little bit unusual, but I think it's something that works to its advantage. You see, full frame terms, this works out to be a 40mm. Now, most people who do street photography will either prefer something that's equivalent to a 35 or something that's closer to a 50. Those are kind of the two sort of traditional lenses. But this one being 40 just kind of sits roughly in the middle of that. But I think that actually works to its advantage, especially when you're using this for its intended purpose of being a one-size-fits-all travel lens. You see, I always think that travel photography is made up of a few key shots, and you want to have three different kinds. You want to have your wides, which show an establishing shot. You want to have your detail shots to get some nice close-ups and get the texture of a place. And then you want to have your mid shots, which is your traditional street photography stuff, and that makes up the body of your work for a place. And this lens being 40mm actually kind of allows it to do all of those at once. If you need something wider, you take a step back. If you need something tighter, you take a couple of steps forward. And for the most part, you're just using it normally, and it sort of sits in that perfect midpoint between showing a subject or showing a scene and a wide shot of all the details. And for something that's so tiny that can literally do everything, you're really saving quite a lot of bag space. I think this scene here is a great example actually. So my back's up against a wall, I can't go any further back. but I want to capture the scene over here. Now, if I was on a 35 on a Fuji, so 50 full frame terms, if I was using a 50 full frame, then I'd be way too tight in, I wouldn't be able to get all of the walls, I wouldn't be able to get all of the signage, all of that, which I think adds a lot to the scene. If I was using a 23, I'd have to crop, so I'm losing effective resolution. The 27 being 40, that sits right in the middle, so actually that works out perfectly. Now, this one being the newer version of the lens, it does have weather sealing. There's an older version that doesn't, and also doesn't have an aperture ring. And in a lot of situations, I would say that weather sealing is one of those things that isn't that important. But in this particular situation, I would say that getting the newer version really does make a difference, because the reason you're getting this lens is for it to be a travel lens. That's the main reason to buy it, is to travel to places with it, and sometimes when you're traveling, you get caught in a rain shower like this one, and there's nothing you can really do about that. So having the peace of mind that your lens has got weather sealing in it actually does make quite a big difference.
After the rain stopped, the second photo walk of the trip took me to Bukit Bintang. And when I got out of the train station, the first thing I found was a very busy and bustling Ramadan bazaar. It was only a couple of hours before sunset, so people are queuing up to get food so that they can eat as soon as the sun goes down. Very sensible to get in the queue early because it was really, really busy. I knew there was going to be a food market here. I was expecting to be able to get a little closer than I could, but I still got some really good shots, especially with some motion blur. After that, I headed up the road just a little bit, and I saw this guy sitting reading on the steps. After making a nice photo of him, I turned around and went into the McDonald's behind me, because I know that on the top floor seating area, there's actually a great view of the crosswalk. After getting a couple of cool pictures there, I headed back downstairs, and while I was waiting to cross the road, I decided to get a few shots with slower shutter speed. I set the shutter to 1/15, set up a nice composition, and then just waited for some bikes, cars, or people to go past depending on what the traffic lights were doing. I'm really happy with how these came out. I think these are some of my favorites. I did then take the opportunity to cross the road while I still could, and then went slightly further up the road to get a couple of really nice shots here and here.
Something that pleasantly surprises me about the lens is just how sharp it is. I'm not the sort of person who's going to go around taking photos of brick walls and zooming into 400% or anything like that, but there are people that have done that, and they can tell you that even wide open, it's a really, really sharp lens. Now, what that means in the real world is that it's just something that you can rely on. You can use it kind of however you want, and it's gonna get good results. The one thing I will say, and this is surely a downside of the smaller construction, is that the autofocus isn't the best. It likes to hunt around a lot, it's quite nervous, it'll overshoot, then undershoot, and then finally settle. And occasionally you do get times where in high contrast situations it fails to find focus at all. It is slightly annoying because the rest of the experience of using the lens is very much just pick it up and point it in the direction you want to take a photograph. But if the focus gets missed sometimes and you can only rely on it 95% of the time, it can be a little bit of a disappointment when one of your shots just comes back just a little bit soft because the lens happened to miss. The other fairly obvious compromise from the small construction is that the lens only opens up to f2.8, which is not super wide for a prime lens. That said, it's far from unusable. The main thing that you'll notice is that the bokeh is not going to be as good, and the opportunities for it just aren't there. But you just have to bear that in mind and then make compositions that don't rely on blurred backgrounds, and I'm sure we're all good enough photographers to do that, right? Now, you might also think that the f2.8 means it would be difficult to take it out at night, and I thought that at first as well, but I'm all about real-world testing, so we have to take it out at night.
Cheesy video links aside, I do want to point out how dark it actually was here. The Insta360 footage here is looking dark already, and in reality it was even darker than that. But for this third and final photo walk of the video, I've come to Jalalur Food Street. It's one of those places where if there's anything you want to find to eat, you can pretty much find it here. There's stalls selling fruit, there's stalls selling hot snacks and fried food, there's some restaurants where you can sit down and order off a menu that has 8,000 dishes on it. Basically, if you're hungry, you're in the right place, and also if you want to take some photos of some neon lighting, you are also in the right place. Now, the lens only opening up to f2.8 at its absolute widest aperture does mean that you're having to use quite high ISO for a lot of these shots, but in a way I think that's adding to it a bit. Getting a little bit more grain and noise into the photographs here isn't the end of the world, and a lot of the time I was able to use spot metering to more focus on the areas of light. I always think that if you lean into the fact that you're photographing in the dark and focus on the contrast that you're getting between the parts of the scene that are light and the parts of the scene that are dark, you're actually going to have a better time than if you try and make everything have an even exposure, because then it won't even look like it's that dark at all. You won't really look like it's nighttime. I did really like this photo here. This is another one I used the digital teleconverter for. It kind of looked like the guy having dinner was being hunted by that tiger, which was quite fun. This one was cool too. I had a couple of attempts here at trying to line this guy's head up with the fan that he was stood just behind, and I was pretty happy with how that turned out. It was nice that he looked in my direction right as the fan blades came round. This is another really good example of focusing on the parts of the scene that are light. I'm not going to try and pump up all of the shadows unrealistically because that just won't look good, but if the market vendors are already shining a light on their food, and then you've got a bright color, you've got some cool subjects to focus on, and then you get the glow from the neon which reflects onto people's faces, like in this photograph. So I don't really think that the f2.8 is a limitation. After I reached the end of this road, I turned back round and went up in the other direction. There was a few more photos that I was happy with, particularly this one with the durian sellers. But after that, it was back onto the underground, back onto a train, and eventually back onto a plane and straight back home.
And we're back. But what do we think? Is this really the perfect travel lens that it claims to be? On one hand, I really do think yes. The focal length is super usable, it's really compact, it's weather sealed, it's good to use, etc, etc, and all of those things really are true. On the other hand, the focus motor isn't the best and the low light performance could be a little better, although I really think we can forgive that considering just how small it is. The main problem that I have with this lens though is that it's just a little bit boring. It doesn't do anything exciting with the way that it renders colour or the way that the images come out. It's not really the sort of lens that's going to make a statement in the way that some faster primes do. It's completely fine, and if you do want something that's lightweight and can travel with you all the time, it's a great choice for that. It's just that I can't help but feel that if I can afford to take something bigger with me, then I probably would prefer to. But what do you guys think? Have you used this lens? Would you want to use this lens? Is this something that's on your shopping list or on your wish list? Do let me know in the comments below, because I'm genuinely curious. But until that point, I will catch you in the next one. See you soon and peace out.